Today we're going to look at a poem from the anthology, and we're going to look at a poem from the section which is called Traditions and Cultures, looking at poems from other traditions and cultures. Before we start to look at the poem, I'd like to first of all tell you what I hope we're going to get out of by the end of the lesson. Okay. The first thing that I hope that you're going to get from the poem is that you're going to understand the meaning. The second thing that we will be looking at in the poem is the way that the poet has used the language in the poem, and we'll be looking at images. The third thing I hope we'll get from the poem is an understanding of the culture of the poet and the culture that's expressed in the poem. Okay. Taking the word culture, the poems from other cultures and traditions, what do you understand by the word culture? Have a little think about it. What do you understand by the word culture? Aminat.
Is it like the way they greet, the way they talk to each other, the way they mix with each other?
Okay, excellent. Okay, the way that people talk to each other. What's another word for the way that people talk? Martin? Communication, okay. What language do we speak in?
English.
English? Okay, do you think language is part of culture?
Yeah.
Would you say? Yeah, James? Another culture, what do they do in terms of their language that's different to us, perhaps?
Different traditions. I don't know.
Okay, think about the language.
The way they live.
Yeah, okay. The language reflects where they live and their traditions. Okay, so the way we talk, the language that we use is important. And James has taken us on to the second word in the section, which is traditions. Okay. Aminat was touching earlier on the way that people act towards each other. Do you think that's a part of culture? Do you think in different countries people act towards each other in a different way? What do you think? Do we act all the same? Does it depend on where we live? Martin?
People act differently.
Okay. Okay, they do different things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different ways and
Can you
stuff.
try and think of an example? Darren?
Is it like religions, so different things?
Okay, that's part of the way that we act, isn't it? Okay. So another thing that perhaps comes into traditions and cultures is religion. Okay, people have different religions or a different religion. What about relationships? Maybe family relationships and relationships within society. Do you think that relationships change according to where you live? Which country you're brought up in? Okay, do people have different relationships in Nigeria to in Britain?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, can you explain a little bit about that? No. Okay. How do we view, for example, our parents in Britain? Perhaps differently to in another country. How would we expect to talk to them? What would we expect them to do for us or do to us? Do you think there's any differences there?
They have more respect for their elders and stuff.
Okay.
And they treat it quite seriously.
Yeah, that's what some people say, that we don't have a lot of respect for our elders or for our parents as opposed to in other countries. Okay, so the relationships and the way that people behave towards each other, maybe the level of respect. Okay. What's important as a young person in Britain to you? What are the things that you would say are really important in your life that you want and that you look forward to, that you have, that you think you might lose if you went somewhere else? Okay, anybody else other than Martin? What do you think is important? Luke?
Friends and family.
Okay, that would come into the relationship part of culture, wouldn't it? What else is important? What are you having now that is free, that you turn up every day, that you perhaps don't want to be here, but...
Education.
Okay. Is that important in British culture?
Yes.
Okay. Is education available for everybody? Does it matter where they live? Or does it depend on their culture?
Well, England, I think their education is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to some other countries, maybe, I don't know.
Maybe it's not as good, maybe it's expensive.
Yeah.
Okay. So education is something that we have in our culture that perhaps is different to in other countries. Okay. And you touched upon religion there. Just thinking about yourselves, how important is religion to you individually? Put your hands up if religion's an important part of your life. Okay, that's not many, but a few people, okay. How important do you think religion is to British culture? Martin?
It is pretty strong, but some countries it is stronger.
Okay. Yeah, it's not particularly strong. Would
It's
we
not.
all agree with that? Yeah? Okay. Let's just think of 2 minutes about traditions. What traditions do we have in Britain? Can you name a tradition? Something that happens year on year, that we know what the rules are, we do it every year, it's a tradition. Tony?
Christmas.
Christmas, okay. Now I'm interested that you said Christmas, because the question that I asked earlier was that religion, how important is it? And you said not very important. What is Christmas? The celebration of what? Luke?
The birth of Jesus Christ.
Is it religious?
Yes.
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 Okay. What other traditions do we have? We have Christmas. What else do we have? David? Birthdays? Is that what we said?
Yeah.
Birthdays, okay, celebration of your own birth. What else do we have? Luke?
Easter.
Easter. What else do we have? Can you think of any other traditions? These are all holidays, aren't they? Birthdays, Easter, Christmas. What other traditions? What happens when you get... Oh, loads of people. Great, okay. Rebecca? Shrove Tuesday. Okay, a special day that we celebrate each year. Okay. Michael?
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day, Father's Day, special days again, celebrations of a special day. Dave?
Wedding anniversaries.
Wedding anniversaries, and just take the anniversary off that. What else do we have that's a
Wedding.
tradition?
Yeah.
Weddings. Okay. What's a traditional wedding? Where does it take place?
Church.
Church. And that brings us back to religion again, doesn't it? Okay. So lots of our traditions, in fact, are to do with religion. Do you think that's true in lots of countries, that their traditions are to do with their religion? Would you say that that's probably true?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to look at how important religion is in the poem. Okay, so a little bit of idea about what culture is, what tradition is. We obviously know our culture better than any other culture. I mean, that's fortunate she knows Nigerian culture as well, so she has that experience too. Anybody else got experience of another culture? Any family that are from another country, or any maybe lived in another country for a while? No, so, I mean, that's the only person in that privileged position to have experienced both. James?
Yeah, I've got an uncle who lives in Texas.
Okay, so do you feel that you know a little bit what American life's like?
Well, I've been there a couple of
Okay,
times.
so you probably got an experience of that. Okay, well, we're going to be looking at a poem that's written by a lady who was born in Pakistan. She then came and lived in Glasgow, and then she went back to live in Bombay in India. Okay, so her culture is quite mixed culture, from Pakistan to Glasgow in Scotland and then to India. And the poem, perhaps, we're looking to see which culture the poem talks about and how the poet does that. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple of things here. First of all, I'm going to give you an envelope that's got the poem. I don't want you to open the anthologies yet. I don't want you cheating on this one. It's got the poem cut up, and in pairs I'd like you to work out what you think the right order for this poem might be. And as you're working it out, I'd like you to try and think of the reasons why you think that's the right order. Okay? And the second thing that I'm going to give you is a series of sheets here. And on the first one, I've left 2 spaces for you to try and work out which 2 words, which 2 things you think are the most important thing to people in this poem. Okay, and all you need to do is write the words in big letters in these 2 spaces, please. There's 2 things that strike you when you're trying to work out a poem that are really important to people in the poem. Okay, one of you write them in big letters on a sheet, and when we've finished looking at the order of the poem, I'd like you to share that with me. Okay, if I give these out, as soon as you've got your poem, try and work out the order. Okay, if you do it in pairs, good. And there's a sheet each. Okay, you can do it together.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, see if you can work out which order it goes in. Okay. Right, if you have a little read of each section first and then try and work out how they might go. And if you read through it, which do you think which to connect together? Okay, read through it. Okay. You make sure that you get a chance to read it and that you're not moving it around so Luke can't read it, okay? Which do you think's the title? The blessing.
I don't know.
Yeah. Right, read it.
Yeah, I think them two.
Well, how do you think the poem might start?
Just go there.
Yeah, from the house, it's an introduction.
Maybe. Read it all first and then we'll...
Okay.
So that's right, okay. Now these bits here, there never is enough water. The skin cracks like a pod. Sometimes a sudden rush of fortune. Imagine a drip of it, a small splash. The municipal pipe bursts. What's happening, do you think? Yes, okay, the water's flowing, yeah? The skin cracks like a pod. What's that suggestion about?
It's so dry.
Right, so what do you think links with that then?
Sometimes sudden rush of fortune. No.
That's saying that it's very dry, yeah? We'd find
The
a
raw
sentence.
tongues with it under that.
Which sentence talks about there not being enough water?
That one.
Right. Do you think that links then?
Yes.
Okay, so link those two together, the other way around, I think. And then, right, and then we're talking about water rushing here. So, but we're talking about water dripping there. And we're talking about pipe bursting. So which way is it going to be? Yeah? Okay. There's a pipe bursting.
Yeah, I think they're right.
What's coming out of the pipe?
Water.
Okay.
Oh, because it's in a hot country and it's saying that the pipe is bursting, and because water is rare, well not rare but pretty good
The lack
around
of
there.
water.
there's
So
lack of
what?
water, they're saying it's
Right,
silver.
that's excellent. What says water's rare? Which sentence says water's rare?
Is it the thing?
Which sentence says water's rare, yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about the rare water first, okay? Right, and then here we've got, what's this talking about?
They're catching the water and they're thanking God
Right,
for it.
they're catching the water, and how much water?
A tin.
Drop.
Right, and what's happening here? How much water's happening here?
A lot of water.
Right, so which do you think comes first? The drip or the rush?
Rush and drip.
Wait, a rush, you think it rushes and then it runs out?
Yeah.
Why is that
No,
word?
actually it won't be, because
Okay, look at that word.
imagine the drip.
Right.
Oh yeah, because then that will go first.
Okay,
Wherever that goes. Yeah.
how are we doing? Yeah.
Do you think this is the right order?
Okay, that's definitely the title. Those two definitely go together. Yeah. Those are connected but the other way around. And then you need to be putting that at the end. So that's the one that you need to be looking at. Where did you think? If this goes at the end, and that's right so far, where do you think this one's going to go? Possibly. Read it through now and then see if you can work out those two words. Okay, let me say that is pretty good, except for that goes there. And you need to be looking at those two, yeah? And then read it through. Once you've got it in what you think's the right order, have a read of it.
Yeah, I'm doing that. So we had it before.
And why is the skin cracking? Yeah, why is the skin cracking? What does it? What's there not
There.
around?
Water.
Right.
So that could be the
Just
earth.
read
Yeah,
it.
it could be the earth, or it could be people.
Yeah, so that goes like that, yeah.
Right. Now these you've got absolutely right, apart from those two that are the wrong way around. But they do connect together. You're absolutely right, yeah. I think that's right. To be honest, I can't remember now. But these two are definitely connected together.
Yeah.
Okay, now read it through and see if you can identify your two main words. Yeah? Okay, try and read through the poem and see if you can find two things, two words that are really important. Write them down. That's good. It's not what I was thinking of, but it's good because it's actually very important, you're right, yeah? Or, in fact, not money, but what else to do with money. No? Have they got a lot of money or not? No. Okay. Lack of money. Okay, can you put your pens down, please, and look this way?